Welcome to our video from Mrs.Deblers Social Studies class made by Emily
and Jack.
This project is about the Grimke sisters, civil rights activists of the early 1800s.
Angelina Grimke was born in 1805, while her sister Sarah was born in 1792.
They were both born in Charleston, South Carolina.
They were born into a wealthy family and participated in a large quantity of social events regularly from a young age. They lived relatively comfortably and were able to look forward to a life of ease and luxury.
With them being so wealthy, their family was able to own slaves, and they happened to own multiple. Angelina cared more for them than the rest of her family.
So when she saw the results of the brutal whipping marks on one of the slaves, she instantly attempted to exile herself from her family and town. She went to a small congregation of Quakers who helped her go under intense religious retrospection and removed her materialistic ways from her lifestyle. She even moved to Philadelphia in hopes to convince her family to reform as well.
She also began to go to abolitionist meetings with the small amount of people who shared the same point of view on slavery in Philadelphia, which is where her sister, Sarah Grimke, had settled. Many violent and brutal anti-abolitionist riots disturbed her to the point where she sent a letter to a fellow abolitionist who also tried to stop the influx of violence.
One of Angelina's earlier notable calls to greatness was when Lloyd Garrison, the abolitionist she sent the letter to, published the letter she sent in The Liberator without her permission.
While this event was immensely embarrassing to her, it more or less jump-started her career as a public figure who fought for the freedom of slaves. With that, her notoriety grew and grew until she and her sister became the first ever female agents of the American Anti-Slavery Society.
Another moment in the lives of the sisters that would be regarded as one of their greatest is their first speech during their first tour around New York and New Jersey. Most were skeptical that two women could help the problem of slavery because being a woman disregards any argument or idea you could have, simply because you're a woman.
Jack, what is that supposed to mean?
No, that was ironic. I wasn't being serious. That was sarcastic. To me and most people, that idea now is nothing but idiotic, but not during the time of the Grimke sisters. It was a common belief held at the time, which makes the fact that the speech and the majority of the tour is viewed as successful even more impressive. Angelina was also the first ever woman to have an audience of the United States legislature. She was able to plead for her cause to some of the most powerful people in the country at the time. This speech became famous and is how most people recognize the sisters now. I stand before you on behalf of the 20,000 women of Massachusetts whose names are enrolled on the petitions which relate to the great and solemn subject of slavery. She used that as her opening statement, which instantly captivated the audience of both supporters and deniers. One of the most difficult things that the two sisters had to work through in their lives was being women in the job of public speaking in the time period they were in, the time period where women's opinions were always seen as inferior or unimportant. Another difficult thing they had to deal with as female public figures was building a reputation and gaining respect. In a society where women are scarcely public figures or of any importance, gaining respect from other men and women alike is an amazing accomplishment, and far from easy.
An additional difficult time they suffered through was on May 16, 1838. Angelina was berated steadily by a hostile mob outside, rocks pelted out the windows, and shouts of protest while she calmly gave her speech on what she'd seen and the harmful effects of slavery. In that night, the same mob from before set fire to the building and offices she worked in.
What I would expect them to be most proud of in their work is how they were able to make such a difference even with so many odds stacked against them.
They were women, in the time where women's opinions meant nothing and were easily dismissed. They were abolitionists in the South, where slavery was the most prominent and supported.
And speaking of the differences they made, they were able to do something that not many other icons can say they did. They helped two minority groups gain rights. They fought for the freedom of African Americans and for the equality of females in the public eye.
The two sisters really affected many in their time, working towards African American rights and the respect and equality for women, getting the image of women to be seen as more capable of being important public figures. They also helped in the movement to free African Americans, affecting both of the groups, which happened to be massive.
And their help and changes still exist today in some form. Women are now far more respected as public figures and are seen as almost equal with men in the public eye. Still not ideal, but much better than it was at the time of the Grimke sisters. And they helped us get to this point. In addition, African Americans are no longer enslaved, obviously, and are also usually seen as equals to Caucasians in media and day-to-day social interactions.
The Grimke sisters also more or less started the precedent of women being more well respected as public figures. They were really some of the first ever women who were able to build a reputation and fight for women and African American rights.